We all make mistakes. At times we act irrationally, even when we know better. Why does this happen? Why do intelligent people often behave in foolish ways? In the Psychology of Stupidity, edited by Jean-François Marmion, we delve into this fascinating and often baffling aspect of human nature. Stupidity, though universally recognized, is hard to define, and its causes are even harder to explain. Yet it plays a crucial role in shaping human experiences, from individual decisions to societal outcomes. This book is a collection of essays from leading psychologists, philosophers, and thinkers who tackle the elusive subject of stupidity. Rather than mocking human error, the contributors aim to understand stupidity's origins, manifestations, and consequences. They explore how stupidity impacts everything from personal relationships to global political decisions. The overarching goal is to shed light on why we make foolish decisions, how we can learn from them, and whether stupidity might actually serve a purpose in human growth. This inquiry is timely in an age where misinformation spreads rapidly, emotions override reason, and our daily decisions seem increasingly fraught with pitfalls. By understanding the psychology behind our irrational behavior, we can learn to better navigate our personal lives and society as a whole. Part 1. The definition of stupidity. Chapter 1. What is stupidity? Jean-François Dortier. Jean-François Dortier opens the book by grappling with the basic question: what exactly is stupidity? Stupidity, he argues, is more than just a lack of intelligence. It is the failure to comprehend or respond appropriately to situations, often due to a mixture of ignorance, emotional bias, or irrational thinking. Dortier suggests that stupidity manifests when people ignore available knowledge, refuse to think critically, or act impulsively. This kind of behavior is not merely intellectual deficiency but involves a deeper failure in judgment. Dortier delves into the complexities of stupidity by noting that it is not solely about being uninformed. People often know what the right thing to do is, but choose to ignore it. For instance, we all know smoking is harmful, yet millions continue to smoke. Dortier argues that stupidity stems from a combination of emotional and cognitive flaws. It is part of the human condition, and everyone experiences it at one point or another. His exploration highlights that stupidity is not a permanent state, but can arise in specific situations when emotions cloud reason or when individuals fail to engage in deep thinking. While Dortier acknowledges that stupidity can lead to harmful outcomes, he also points out that it is a normal aspect of human behavior. After all, no one can be rational all the time. The challenge, he proposes, is learning how to recognize and mitigate our own stupidity before it causes lasting damage. Chapter 2. Why are we sometimes stupid? Christophe André, psychologist. Christophe André dives into the emotional underpinnings of stupidity. According to André, one of the main reasons we act foolishly is due to stress, anxiety, or heightened emotions. These emotions cloud our judgment, causing us to make impulsive or irrational decisions. For example, people who feel fear may act out of desperation, leading to choices that worsen their situation. Similarly, anger can provoke actions that are regretted once the emotional storm subsides. André explains that emotions evolved as survival mechanisms, but they can sometimes sabotage our ability to think clearly. When we are under emotional duress, our brain prioritizes immediate action over thoughtful reflection. In such moments, even the most intelligent people can make irrational decisions. He gives examples from everyday life: shouting at someone in a heated argument, buying unnecessary items during a shopping spree, or rushing through tasks at work due to anxiety. To combat emotional stupidity, André recommends cultivating self-awareness. By recognizing when emotions are clouding our thinking, we can step back, breathe, and wait until we regain clarity before making decisions. This habit of emotional regulation can help prevent foolish mistakes and promote better decision-making. Chapter 3. Is being stupid actually that bad? Pascal Engel, philosopher. Pascal Engel offers a contrarian view. Stupidity, he argues, is not always as harmful as it seems. While it's true that foolish decisions can lead to negative consequences, stupidity can also serve as a valuable teacher. Engel suggests that mistakes, which often arise from stupidity, provide opportunities for growth. Failure forces us to reassess our actions, learn from our errors, and refine our thinking. Engel discusses the concept of productive failure, where making mistakes is part of the learning process. For instance, children learn to walk by falling repeatedly. Entrepreneurs who fail early in their careers often emerge stronger and more successful because they have learned valuable lessons from their mistakes. Engel posits that while stupidity can be frustrating or even dangerous, it is also a normal and necessary part of human development. He argues that society's obsession with avoiding mistakes can stifle creativity and innovation. Sometimes, being willing to be stupid and take risks leads to breakthroughs. Engel calls for a balanced perspective on stupidity. While it's important to avoid foolish actions when possible, we should also recognize the potential for growth and learning that stupidity provides. Chapter 4. Can you measure stupidity? Nicolas Gauvreet. In this chapter, Nicolas Gauvreet tackles a provocative question. Can we measure stupidity? While intelligence is often measured through IQ tests and other standardized assessments, stupidity is far more elusive. Gauvreet explains that stupidity involves not just a lack of cognitive ability but also emotional and behavioral elements. Therefore, it's difficult to capture stupidity in the same way that we measure intelligence. Gauvreet explores the various ways psychologists have tried to quantify irrational behavior. Some studies measure people's susceptibility to cognitive biases, while others assess impulsivity or emotional instability. However, Gauvreet notes that these tests do not capture the full picture of stupidity because they often focus on isolated behaviors rather than the broader patterns of decision-making that define stupidity. Instead of trying to measure stupidity through numbers, Gauvreet suggests that we approach it as a pattern of behavior. He proposes that stupidity is more about actions than cognitive capacity. A person can have a high IQ, but still act foolishly if they allow emotions or biases to influence their decisions. Therefore, understanding stupidity requires looking at context, behavior, and underlying psychological factors. Chapter 5. Why is everyone else stupid? Serge Saccotti explores a phenomenon that is common to many of us: the tendency to see others as stupid, while assuming that our own actions are rational and justified. This chapter delves into cognitive biases like the illusory superiority effect, where people believe they are more competent than they actually are, and confirmation bias, which causes us to seek out information that supports our existing beliefs. Saccotti explains that these biases create a distorted view of the world. We tend to overestimate our intelligence and assume that others' mistakes are the result of stupidity rather than understanding their situation or emotional state. This leads to a widespread sense of superiority, where people dismiss the opinions and actions of others while ignoring their own faults. The chapter calls for greater self-awareness and humility. Saccotti suggests that instead of quickly labeling others as foolish, we should recognize our own limitations and biases. This shift in perspective can foster empathy and improve our ability to navigate social relationships and decision-making. Part 2. Stupidity in Everyday Life. Chapter 6. Stupidity in Relationships. Béatrice Millet. Relationships are often fraught with miscommunication and misunderstandings, and Béatrice Millet argues that much of this can be traced back to stupidity. In relationships, emotional reactions frequently override logic, leading to arguments, hurt feelings, and irrational behavior. People may say or do things they later regret because they let their emotions take control. Millet points out that many relationship problems arise from a failure to listen or to empathize with the other person. Stubbornness, pride, and insecurity can cloud judgment, making it difficult to see situations clearly. This type of emotional stupidity can be particularly harmful because it damages trust and intimacy over time. Millet offers solutions for reducing stupidity in relationships. She advocates for emotional intelligence, learning to manage our own emotions and better understand the emotions of others. By practicing empathy, patience, and active listening, we can avoid many of the pitfalls that lead to foolish behavior in relationships. Chapter 7. Can we learn from our mistakes? Jean-Claude Monbois asks a crucial question: do we really learn from our mistakes? While some people seem to grow and improve after failures, others continue to make the same errors repeatedly. Marmion explores why this happens and what it takes to turn a mistake into a learning experience. The key, he argues, lies in reflection. After making a mistake, individuals need to pause and think critically about what went wrong and why. However, many people avoid this process because they feel shame or embarrassment. Instead of owning up to their errors, they make excuses or blame external factors, which prevents them from learning and growing. Marmion highlights that true learning requires a mindset of humility and accountability. When people are willing to confront their mistakes honestly, they can extract valuable lessons that help them avoid repeating the same errors in the future. However, without this willingness to reflect and change, people remain stuck in cycles of stupidity. Chapter 8. The Role of Emotion in Stupidity. Eric Singler. Eric Singler explores the powerful role that emotions play in driving stupidity. Emotions are an essential part of the human experience, but when they run unchecked, they can lead to irrational decisions and regrettable actions. Anger, love, fear, and excitement can all cloud judgment, causing people to make impulsive decisions that they later regret. Singler examines how different emotions influence decision-making. For example, fear can cause people to overreact to perceived threats, leading them to make hasty decisions without fully assessing the situation. Similarly, love can cause people to act irrationally, ignoring red flags or taking risks that they wouldn't consider in a calmer state of mind. The chapter also discusses how emotional regulation, learning to manage and understand our emotions, can help reduce the likelihood of acting stupidly. Singler suggests techniques like mindfulness and cognitive behavioral strategies to help people recognize when their emotions are taking over and regain control before making decisions. Chapter 9. Are Smart People Less Stupid? Ryan Holiday. It's easy to assume that intelligence protects against stupidity, but Ryan Holiday reveals that this isn't the case. Smart people can be just as prone to stupidity as anyone else, and in some cases their intelligence can even make them more vulnerable to certain kinds of errors. Holiday explains that intelligent people are often overconfident in their abilities, which leads them to take risks or ignore advice from others. This overconfidence, combined with the cognitive biases that affect everyone, means that even the smartest individuals can make foolish decisions. In fact, their intelligence may make them more adept at justifying their mistakes or rationalizing irrational behavior. Holiday concludes that intelligence alone is not enough to prevent stupidity. To avoid foolish decisions, smart people need to cultivate humility and self-awareness. Recognizing that intelligence doesn't equate to infallibility is a crucial step in avoiding the pitfalls of overconfidence. Chapter 10. Why do we persist in being stupid? Jean-Louis Chifflet. In the final chapter of Part 2, Jean-Louis Chifflet addresses the frustrating question, why do we keep acting stupidly, even when we know better? Chifflet points to the role of habits, social pressures, and the comfort of routine in perpetuating stupidity. People often stick to familiar patterns of behavior, even when those behaviors are clearly irrational or harmful. Chifflet also discusses how societal norms can encourage stupidity. For example, groupthink can cause individuals to go along with foolish decisions because they don't want to stand out or challenge the status quo. Additionally, people may resist change because it requires effort and uncertainty, even if they know that their current course of action is unwise. The chapter concludes by suggesting that breaking out of these cycles of stupidity requires conscious effort. People must be willing to step outside their comfort zones, question their assumptions, and embrace new ways of thinking. While this can be challenging, it is the only way to break free from persistent patterns of foolishness. Part 3. Stupidity in Society. Chapter 11. The Dangers of Groupthink. Roland Juvent. In this chapter, Roland Juvent delves into the phenomenon of groupthink, a form of collective stupidity that arises when individuals prioritize group cohesion over critical thinking. Groupthink occurs when a group of people, striving for consensus, suppresses dissenting opinions, stifling creativity and innovation. It is a dangerous dynamic that can lead to disastrous decisions, especially in high-stakes environments like politics, business, or the military. Jean explains that in a groupthink scenario, individuals may feel pressured to conform to the dominant viewpoint, even if they personally disagree. The fear of standing out or causing conflict discourages people from voicing concerns or alternative ideas. This suppression of individual thought leads to a lack of critical examination of the group's decisions, allowing flawed logic, poor planning, and irrational conclusions to go unchallenged. This is especially dangerous in situations where the group is tasked with making important decisions that affect many people. One of the most famous examples of groupthink is the Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, when U.S. government officials, despite numerous warning signs, proceeded with a poorly conceived plan that ended in failure. Jean argues that groupthink thrives in hierarchical environments where individuals at lower levels are hesitant to challenge authority, leading to an echo chamber where everyone convinces themselves that the group is on the right path, even when evidence suggests otherwise. Jean emphasizes that groupthink can be mitigated by encouraging open dialogue and fostering a culture where dissenting opinions are not only tolerated, but welcomed. Leaders play a crucial role in this process by actively soliciting feedback and ensuring that group members feel comfortable expressing their views without fear of reprisal. The ability to engage in healthy disagreement, he asserts, is a hallmark of a well-functioning group and can prevent the collective stupidity that often results from groupthink. Chapter 12. The Political Exploitation of Stupidity. Gerald Bronner. Gerald Bronner shifts the focus to the political arena, where he explores how politicians and political movements often exploit the public's susceptibility to stupidity for personal gain. Bronner explains that emotions rather than logic often drive political decision-making, making it easier for politicians to manipulate public opinion by appealing to fear, anger, or nationalism rather than reasoned debate. In today's media-saturated world, Bronner argues politicians often rely on sound bites and emotional rhetoric to capture attention, bypassing rational discourse in favor of sensationalism. This strategy is particularly effective in an age where complex issues are reduced to oversimplified slogans and where nuanced debate is often drowned out by the loudest, most extreme voices. Bronner points out that demagogues throughout history have used similar tactics, capitalizing on the public's emotional vulnerabilities to push through irrational or harmful policies. He highlights how populist leaders often cast themselves as the champions of the common people, pitting them against intellectuals, experts, or elites. This anti-intellectual stance fosters an environment where reasoned argument and expert opinion are dismissed in favor of simplistic solutions to complex problems. Politicians exploit this dynamic by presenting themselves as the voice of the people, promising easy fixes to difficult issues, all while playing on the public's fears and frustrations. Bronner warns that this political exploitation of stupidity undermines democracy, as it encourages voters to make decisions based on emotion rather than informed reasoning. He stresses the importance of critical thinking and media literacy in resisting this manipulation, advocating for a more engaged and thoughtful electorate that demands substantive debate and accountability from its leaders. Chapter 13. Stupidity in the Media. Johan Norberg. Johan Norberg takes a closer look at the media's role in perpetuating stupidity. In an era where information is more accessible than ever, the media has the power to inform and educate the public. However, as Norberg points out, the modern media landscape often prioritizes sensationalism, entertainment, and clickbait over thoughtful journalism, contributing to a culture where shallow thinking and emotional reactions are the norm. Norberg explains that the media's focus on ratings and clicks has led to a dumbing down of public discourse. Complex issues are simplified into easily digestible sound bites, and stories that provoke outrage or fear are given more prominence than those that encourage critical thinking. This creates a feedback loop where media consumers are constantly exposed to emotionally charged, often misleading content, reinforcing their pre-existing biases and discouraging nuanced understanding. The rise of social media has only exacerbated this problem. Platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram reward content that generates engagement, likes, shares, and comments, regardless of its accuracy or intellectual value. As a result, misinformation and sensationalism spread rapidly, contributing to a culture where stupidity thrives. Norberg emphasizes the need for media literacy, urging consumers to be more discerning about the information they consume. He advocates for a critical approach to media consumption, where readers and viewers are encouraged to question the validity of sources, seek out diverse perspectives, and engage with content that challenges their beliefs. By doing so, he argues, we can begin to counter the influence of stupidity in the media and foster a more informed and rational public. Chapter 14. Can Science Protect Us from Stupidity? Gerald Bronner. In a return to the topic of rationality, Gerald Bronner explores whether science can serve as a safeguard against stupidity. Science, by its nature, promotes critical thinking, evidence-based reasoning, and skepticism, all tools that can help counteract irrational behavior and decision-making. However, Bronner cautions that science alone is not enough to prevent stupidity, as scientific knowledge is often misused or misunderstood by the public. Bronner explains that while science offers a framework for understanding the world, it is frequently distorted to fit ideological or emotional narratives. People selectively use scientific findings to support their preconceived beliefs, ignoring evidence that contradicts their views. This misuse of science contributes to the spread of misinformation, as people latch onto cherry-picked data or pseudoscientific claims to justify irrational actions. Moreover, Bronner points out that scientific literacy among the general population remains relatively low, making it difficult for people to critically evaluate scientific claims. This lack of understanding makes the public more susceptible to manipulation by those who misrepresent scientific findings for personal or political gain. Despite these challenges, Bronner argues that science remains one of the most powerful tools for combating stupidity. He calls for greater investment in science education and critical thinking skills, emphasizing the importance of teaching people how to evaluate evidence and question assumptions. By fostering a culture of scientific inquiry and skepticism, society can better resist the forces of stupidity and irrationality. Part 4. Overcoming Stupidity. Chapter 15. Can we become less stupid? Olivier Houdet. Olivier Houdet tackles the central question of whether it is possible for individuals, and by extension society, to reduce their susceptibility to stupidity. He begins by acknowledging that stupidity is an inherent part of the human condition, arising from cognitive biases, emotional impulses, and habitual thinking. However, Houdet believes that by cultivating certain mental habits, we can reduce our tendency to act foolishly. One of the key strategies Houdet advocates is the practice of metacognition, or thinking about one's own thinking. By regularly reflecting on our thought processes, we can become more aware of the cognitive biases that influence our decisions and take steps to correct them. For example, recognizing the tendency to make decisions based on emotion rather than logic can help individuals pause and reconsider their actions before making rash choices. Houdet also emphasizes the importance of emotional regulation in reducing stupidity. Emotions often cloud judgment, leading to impulsive and irrational decisions. By learning to manage emotions through techniques such as mindfulness or cognitive behavioral therapy, individuals can make more rational, thoughtful decisions, even in emotionally charged situations. Ultimately, Houdet is optimistic that with the right mental tools and practices, we can all become less prone to stupidity. He calls for a lifelong commitment to personal growth, self-awareness, and critical thinking as the key to overcoming our inherent cognitive limitations. Chapter 16. Intelligence and its Limits. Thierry Ripoll. Thierry Ripoll examines the relationship between intelligence and stupidity, arguing that intelligence alone is not enough to protect against foolish behavior. While intelligence is often seen as the opposite of stupidity, Ripoll points out that many highly intelligent people still make poor decisions. This paradox arises because intelligence, defined as the ability to reason and solve problems, does not necessarily correlate with emotional intelligence, wisdom, or ethical judgment. Ripoll explains that intelligence can sometimes exacerbate stupidity by fostering overconfidence. Highly intelligent individuals may believe that their intellect makes them infallible, leading them to dismiss alternative viewpoints or ignore their own cognitive biases. This intellectual arrogance can result in greater mistakes than those made by less intelligent individuals, who may be more cautious or open to feedback. To counteract the limitations of intelligence, Ruppel advocates for the cultivation of wisdom, which he defines as the ability to make sound judgments that take into account both reason and emotion. Wisdom, unlike intelligence, involves a balance of cognitive and emotional factors, as well as a deep understanding of human nature and ethical principles. Ruppel suggests that wisdom, rather than intelligence, is the true antidote to stupidity. Chapter 17. Education, the Solution to Stupidity? Monique Cantos-Sperber. In the final chapter, Monique Cantos-Sperber explores the role of education in reducing stupidity. While education is often seen as the key to fostering rational thinking and preventing foolish decisions, Cantos-Sperber argues that the current education system falls short in this regard. Traditional education, she contends, focuses too much on rote learning and the accumulation of knowledge, rather than teaching students how to think critically. Cantos-Sperber advocates for a shift in education toward teaching critical thinking skills. Rather than simply memorizing facts, students should be taught how to analyze information, evaluate evidence, and question assumptions. This type of education fosters intellectual curiosity and open-mindedness, equipping individuals with the tools to resist cognitive biases and emotional manipulation. However, Cantos-Sperber acknowledges that education alone cannot fully eliminate stupidity. For education to be effective, individuals must be willing to engage with new ideas, challenge their own beliefs, and embrace uncertainty. This requires a cultural shift toward valuing intellectual humility and continuous learning. Conclusion: Stupidity. The ultimate Marmion. Jean-François Marmion concludes the book by reflecting on the nature of stupidity and the challenges it presents. He acknowledges that while stupidity is an inevitable part of being human, it is not something we are powerless to address. By understanding the cognitive and emotional factors that contribute to foolish behavior, we can begin to mitigate its effects in our personal lives and society. Marmion emphasizes that the true challenge lies in recognizing our own tendencies towards stupidity. It is easy to point out the foolishness of others, but much harder to confront our own irrationality and cognitive biases. However, by cultivating self-awareness, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence, we can reduce the frequency of our own mistakes and make more rational, informed decisions. Call to action. Stupidity is a universal human experience, but it doesn't have to define us. By applying the lessons from the psychology of stupidity in your daily life, you can become more self-aware, make smarter decisions, and contribute to a more rational society. Challenge yourself to think critically, question assumptions, and manage your emotions, both in your personal life and in your interactions with the world around you. Start today by recognizing your own cognitive biases and striving to overcome them. Encourage others to do the same, and together, we can reduce the influence of stupidity and build a future grounded in reason, empathy, and open-mindedness.